Okay, here we go. Question 1. Is the Mission Gemini FRFR? Yes, it is. FRFR means full range flat response, and the Gemini is a FRFR cabinet. It's able to support up to 20 kilohertz and is relatively flat in terms of sound pressure level across the range of frequencies that it supports. A typical guitar cabinet will generally tail off around about 3 to 4 kilohertz and also may emphasize and de-emphasize certain frequencies, and that's part of the characteristics of that particular cabinet. When you are using a device such as the Kemper that has cabinet simulators, you really need to play that back through a cabinet that is a flat response cabinet so that it effectively represents that speaker model that's in the software. Question 2. Does the Gemini have coaxial speaker drivers? Yes, it does, and I've got a couple here. So this is a 12-inch low frequency driver from a Gemini, and if I switch it over and we look at it from behind, you'll see that there's a hole here in the middle of the back of the driver. And if I reach down here, the reason for that is this is the high frequency driver, and the high frequency driver fits into the back of the low frequency driver. And then looking again at the front of the speaker, we can see that the center of the low frequency driver and the high frequency driver are both in the center here. They are coaxial. Now, one of the advantages to this is just the sound of the speaker. It sounds a little more natural, in my opinion, having all of the frequencies emanating from the same point. If you use a separate high frequency driver in a different position, sometimes kind of off here, you'll need to put horn loading in order to get the dispersion, and then also some other tricks like time delays in software in order to match up the high and low frequencies. And those can be a little tricky, and in my view, a coaxial speaker just sounds a little more natural. Another advantage to a coaxial speaker is that when it's inside the cabinet, there's not really any way of telling which type of driver it is that you have. So you can mic this up like you would do a normal cabinet, and when you move the microphone closer to the center, the high frequency goes up, and when you move it further away, it goes down, and it behaves from a microphone standpoint exactly the same as a standard speaker. So if you're on stage and the sound person is micing it up, they don't need to know that you have something special here, something that's doing different frequencies. They can just mic it up in the same way as they would do a guitar speaker. Alrighty. Is it a powered cabinet? Yes, the Gemini 2 has 2 internal power amps and 2 speaker sets for each one. You connect it up to wall power to power it up, and then you connect line level signals from a modeler or from some software device such as a computer or a mixing disc. Question 4. What's the USB for? So as well as being a studio monitor, the Gemini is also a USB audio interface. So there's a USB connection on the back. You can connect this to a computer, and it provides a 96K 24-bit studio quality USB audio interface that you can use for playback and recording. This means you can connect a computer and play back audio tracks that you can play along with. You can also connect a guitar into the back, and you can record direct into your digital audio workstation. Question 5. What's the M-Power control for? Okay, the M-Power control is a knob on the back of the Gemini. M-Power is a kind of like a tone control. It reduces some of the high frequency element of the monitor. One of the reasons for this is that people who are used to playing through a regular guitar cabinet and play through full range cabinets for the first time sometimes find that those high frequency components that are present in the signal that they're not used to hearing in normal guitar speaker cabinets, they're not necessarily all that comfortable with those. So using the MPAL control, you can just dial those down, make it sound more like a regular speaker cabinet. It's also useful for playing on stage when you're moving to different environments, because you can use the MPAL control as just a single knob frequency tuning, so that you can tune the cabinet to a particular environment without having to mess around with the EQ in your presets. All right. Question 6. What's the difference between Gemini and other FR speakers? Okay, a couple of things I would say there. The first one is the construction. The Gemini is built like a boutique tube amp. We use the same materials, we use the same techniques. It has a fairly large cabinet with a good deal of air movement, and this means that as well as having the modern capabilities of a full range flat response cabinet, it also behaves like a guitar speaker cabinet. So it moves a lot of air. You can feel the air movement through the speaker drivers the same as a regular guitar cabinet. It feeds back like a normal guitar cabinet, so you can interact with it like a guitar cabinet, even though it's a full range flat response guitar system. The other thing I would say is that the analog and digital interfaces are completely separate on this device, and the analog interface is analog all the way through. So when you take out the analog interface out of a device such as the Kemper here and you connect to analog here, there's no extra A to D conversion that takes place. The only A to D is taking place on the digital side if you're using the USB or the optional Bluetooth interface, but that's completely separate from the analog side. And that's another thing that gives the Gemini its unique guitar speaker-like sound, even though it's a full range flat response cam. Question 7. What's the big deal about the Baltic Birch construction? Baltic Birch has been used for a long time in building high-end speaker cabinets, high-end hi-fi systems, and certainly high-end tube amps and combos. And there's a couple of reasons for that. One is that it's very dense material, so it's very strong. It'll last a long time. And another reason is that it's what they call void free, which means that the layers of the wood don't have holes or voids in them. And this means it's a lot more even across the whole of the wood construction. And this prevents any kind of unexpected resonances. And it means you get a much more even frequency response from the system. The whole cabinet in a Gemini is made from Baltic Birch, so the speaker baffle, the shell, and the back. We don't cheap out by putting in an MDF back. It's a fully Baltic Birch constructed cabinet. Is the Gemini 2 stereo? Yes, it is. The Gemini 2 is a stereo cabinet. We have a Gemini 1, which is the mono version. The 2 is stereo. It can be bridged to mono from a switch on the back if you prefer, but by default it's running in stereo mode. This means that if you connect a device like the Kemper here, which has stereo effects such as reverb, delays and choruses, you can represent those stereo effects in the speaker cabinet. Also, because it has the USB audio interface, you can play stereo audio through it, and if necessary you can, as I say, bridge this to mono, and then you can use a second one if you want a wide stereo separation on a stage, for example. Question 9. I'm based in or travel to another country. Can I use the Mission Gemini internationally? Yes, you can. The power supply inside the Gemini is auto-detecting, so you can use it in any country. You just need to have the right IEC cable, and you can buy those from Mission, or you can purchase them in the country where you're going. They're the standard 3-prong IEC cables. Just plug those in and then connect to the AC wall supply in the country where you are. The power supply will automatically detect and set appropriately. And question 10. Is the Gemini loud enough to play with a band? Yes, absolutely. It's the power amplifiers and the speakers inside the cabinet were designed to work together. They're a very efficient combination. We get the most out of every watt of amplifier power. And in fact, one of the things that we most commonly hear from customers when they first power one up is, wow, this thing's a lot louder than I expected. All right, that's it. That is 10 things about the Gemini 2 in probably just a little over 10 minutes. Thanks so much for watching. See you again next time.